problem-solving steps, and we'll do so using an example of a problem that asks us to find the number or numbers. My name is Darren Lacoste. To solve a word problem, follow these 4 steps, as presented on page 111 of the Roxwald and Krieger text, Beginning Algebra with Applications in Visualization, 2nd edition. Step 1. Read the problem carefully and be sure that you understand it. You may need to read the problem more than once. Assign a variable to what you are being asked to find. If necessary, write other quantities in terms of this variable. Step 2. Write an equation that relates the quantities described in the problem. You may need to sketch a diagram or refer to known formulas. Step 3. Solve the equation. Use the solution to determine the solutions to the original problem. Include any necessary units. Step 4. Look back and check your solution in the given problem. Does it seem reasonable? Alright, so knowing what these steps are is nice, but let's see if we can apply them to an example that should help you remember these 4 problem-solving steps. So here's an example problem. 2 numbers, a larger number and a smaller number, add to 316. When the smaller number is subtracted from the larger number, the result is 80. What are the 2 numbers? Alright, so let's go through the 4 problem-solving steps to determine the 2 numbers. Step 1, read and reread. Well, we've already read the problem. Let's read it one more time. 2 numbers, a larger number and a smaller number, those are what we're looking for, add to 316. That is to say, their sum is 316. When the smaller number is subtracted from the larger number, the result is 80. Notice the use of the word from here. From indicates the order of the subtraction. So in this particular case, it will be larger number minus smaller number equals 80, which is the difference. What are the 2 numbers? Okay, so we've read and we've reread the problem. We understand the problem. So let's go ahead and assign a variable. Assigning a variable is a very important part of any word problem. We need to find out what are we looking for. So to do that, one of the things that we should probably do first is identify what the quantities in the problem are, and then we can pick one of them to be our variable and then solve for it. Step 1 of the 4 steps of solving a word problem is probably the most useful but most challenging step for students. And so I strongly advise that you find a worksheet on word problems and just see if you can do step 1. If you can consistently do step 1, it will significantly improve your success rate with word problems. Alright, so we need to identify the quantities. A quantity in a problem is something that has significance in the problem that we can measure using a number. So in this case, we look back on the problem and we notice that there are 2 numbers, a larger number and a smaller number. When we add them, we get one thing. When we subtract them, we get something else. Those 2 numbers are the quantities in this problem. So let's write that out. The quantities in this problem are the smaller number and the larger number. Typically, though not always, the quantities of a problem are things that we don't know. They're things that we're trying to solve for. Sometimes one of the relevant quantities will be something that we're given. For example, if it was a problem involving the lengths and the widths of a rectangle, the perimeter, which is a quantity, might be given to us. Alright, but let's stick with this problem. We're trying to find these 2 numbers. So we've determined what the quantities are. Now we need to assign a variable. So let's go ahead and do that. This problem is asking us to determine the value of the smaller number and the larger number, so one of those needs to be our variable. It really doesn't matter which one is which for this particular problem. Let's just go ahead and say that it's going to be the smaller number, that's going to be our variable. So we'll write that the smaller number will be represented by the variable s, and I'm going to write a colon and an equal sign here, and that symbol means is defined to mean, or is defined to represent. So s is our variable, and s represents the smaller number. Okay, the last part of step 1 says write other quantities in terms of that variable. Well, we have to read the problem carefully if we want to be able to do that. We have one of the sentences here that says that the larger number and the smaller number add to 316. So if we were to translate that, we would need to define what the larger number is as far as a variable is concerned. Let's call that L. So let's say L is equal to the larger number. And let's translate that sentence that we were just reading. We have that a larger number and a smaller number add to 316. Okay, so the smaller number is S, the larger number is L, and when we add them, in other words, that's S plus L, the result equals, so we'll put the equal sign there, 316. Now step 1 says write other quantities in terms of that variable. S is our variable. That means L is one of our other quantities, and we need to write L in terms of S. This is actually the process known as solving a literal equation. We have a formula, S plus L equals 316. We want to rearrange it so that it says L equals something. To do that, we need to get L alone. So we're going to subtract S from both sides of the equation. Remember, whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do to the other. We'll draw this line. S minus S is 0, and 0 plus L is just L. So on the left now we have L equals. On the right we have 316 and S. Those are unlike terms that we cannot combine, so we leave this as L equals 316 minus S. Okay, so with that we have achieved step 1. I'd like to remind you that step 1 is the most challenging part of solving any word problem. So if there's any one thing that you would like to do to practice to improve your skills in solving word problems, it would definitely be step 1. Okay, so let's move on to step 2. Step 2 says, refer to known formulas, sketch a diagram, and write an equation. So for a numbers problem, a problem that asks you to find the numbers, typically there aren't any known formulas that you would pull from outside of this particular problem. So we'll go ahead and check off that we're taking this into account, and I'm going to put a little X through the end of the check mark to indicate that there really aren't any known formulas that are going to help us here. We also can't really sketch a diagram. If this was something involving geometry, maybe a rectangle or some surface that we are interested in measuring, then we might be able to draw a picture, but in this case we're just trying to find two numbers and how they relate to one another. So what's really important here is that we write an equation. So we look back at our word problem. We've already used the first sentence, that S plus L add to 316, so there's really only one more that we will consider here, which is to say that the second sentence, when the smaller number is subtracted from the larger number, the result is 80. Keep in mind the word from tells you the order of subtraction. That means if you're subtracting from the larger number, then the larger number is written first in your subtraction problem. So it would be larger number minus smaller number equals 80. So let's write that. Larger number minus smaller number equals 80. Now we just need to translate that into an equation. So the reason why we identified our quantities in step 1 is so that we could write our equation using those quantities. So larger number minus smaller number, well, larger number is represented by L, so if I wanted to change this into equation, I would write L minus smaller number, so that's minus S, equals 80. There we go. So I have written my equation. Notice that in this problem I now have two equations. In step 1, I have an equation for L because I was asked to write other quantities in terms of our variable S. So in step 1, we have that L equals 316 minus S. In step 2, we have that L minus S equals 80. Okay, so we are done with steps 1 and 2. And now we're ready to move on to step 3. Step 3 says, solve the equation. Now this is an interesting problem because we actually have two equations and we're going to have to use them together in order to come up with a solution. Step 3 also asks us to use the solution to answer the question asked, including any needed units. Alright, so let's take a look at this. We know that we have the equation that L minus s is equal to 80. And we also found out that L is equal to 316 minus s. So what we're going to do in this particular problem is make what we call a substitution. We know that L is equal to 316 minus s, so everywhere we see L, we can just put 316 minus s, because L and 316 minus s are equal quantities. So let's do that in our first equation. The first equation says L minus s equals 80. Replacing L by 316 minus s gives us 316 minus s, that was the L part, minus s equals 80. Same equation as the one above it, I've just replaced L with 316 minus s. Okay, so I can drop the parentheses because I do not have a number out front, and I do not have a negative sign out front. So this gives me 316 minus s equals 80. I have some like terms here that I can combine. I've got my minus s. So if I take away s and then I take away s again, the result is that I've taken away s twice. This is 316 minus 2s equals 80. Okay. Now my goal here is to be able to solve for s. To do that, I want to get s by itself, and since I don't like dealing with negative numbers, my plan is going to be to put the s on the right side of the equation. So I'm going to add 2s on the left, and I'm going to add 2s on the right. And I'll draw my horizontal line here. So on the left side, I have 316 minus 2s plus 2s. Well, minus 2s plus 2s cancel each other out, because negative 2s plus 2s is just 0. 316 plus 0 is, of course, 316. So on the left, I have the number 316. On the right, I have to add 80 and 2s, but 80 and 2s are unlike terms that cannot be combined. So I simply write 80 plus 2s. Alright, we're getting there. Now, if we've got the s on the right-hand side, we need to get everything else on the left-hand side, which means getting rid of the 80. The 80 is being added to the 2s, so to move it and get rid of it, we need to subtract. So we're going to subtract 80 from both sides. Once again, we'll draw the line. 80 minus 80 is 0, and 0 plus 2s is just 2s. So on the right, we now have 2s. And on the left, we have 316 minus 80, which is 236. Only one more step to go. So if 2 times s is 236, then what is s? Well, there are a couple of ways to do that, but one of the most popular is to divide both sides of the equation by the coefficient of the variable. Remember, s is our variable, and the coefficient is the number that's being multiplied by it. That's 2. So let's go ahead and divide both sides of our equation by 2. We had a 236 on the left, so we'll divide that by 2. We had a 2s on the right, and we're going to divide that by 2. Since we divided both parts of our equation, both sides of the equation, by the same number, it remains true. It remains equal. And we can use the fundamental property of fractions to, in essence, cancel this 2 with that one. So on the right, we have s. And on the left, we have 236 divided by 2, which is 118. Okay. So we've done something significant. We have determined that the variable s is equal to 118. And remember, back in step 1, we defined s to represent the smaller number. So we've actually found the smaller number. The smaller number is 118. Now all that remains to do is come up with the larger number. Well, remember that the larger number, which we called L, was defined back in step 1. And we found that L is equal to 316 minus s. Well, now that we know s, we can plug the value of s into this equation, and that will tell us the value of L. So L must be equal to 316 minus 118. And after a little bit of subtraction, we find that that is going to give us that L is equal to 198. Again, L was a variable. In step 1, we defined L to represent the larger number. So by saying L equals 198, we now know that the larger number is 198. So let's write this. We now know that the smaller number, which we represented with S, is 118. The larger number which we represented with L, is 198. As a final note for step 3, the second sentence says, use the solution to answer the question asked, which we have done, and it says including any needed units. There are no units associated with this problem, so let's just go ahead and write that, so that we don't, so we'd like to acknowledge that we didn't forget to think about that. There are no units in this problem. Okay, that brings us to step 4. Step 4 is where you do one of two things. You either check your work, check your answer, or you perform what's called a reality check, which is to say you look at your answer in the context of the problem and ask yourself, is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Now, a lot of students find that when they get to check their work, they're tempted to recreate the steps that they did using algebra. But the right idea here is to use the answers in the context of the original problem and see if it makes sense. So for example, two numbers, a larger number and a smaller number, add to 316. Well, we found the smaller number and the larger number, so let's make sure they add to 316. Our smaller number was 118. Our larger number was 198. When we add this, it should give us 316, otherwise we've made a mistake. Alright, here we go. 8 plus 8 is 16, so we write the 6 and carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus the carried 1 is 11, so we write that 1 and carry a 1. 1 and 1 is 2, plus the carried 1 is 3. Look at that, we got 316. Okay, so now we need to check the other part. When the smaller number is subtracted from the larger number, the result is 80. That is to say, the larger number minus the smaller number equals 80. Well, let's try that. The larger number is 198. Minus the smaller number, which is 118. 8 minus 8 is 0, 9 minus 1 is 8, and 1 minus 1 is 0, which gives us 80. So that checks. This answer passes the check/reality check. With that, we've completed all 4 steps of our word problem. Now, this may seem like this was a rather long procedure to go through, but the idea here is that if you understand the process very well, you'll be able to use it to attempt almost any word problem that you encounter. I hope you found this information helpful. I wish you good luck, and thank you for listening.